see the hospital from where he got stopped. There was no reason for him to be dead. They handcuffed my son and beat the total crap out of him through all 4 doors, the back 2 doors and the front 2 doors, and they were reaching over the girl. She told me, she was the driver, she told me that she felt like they had she thought they broke her rib trying to reach over after Chris. They were all 4 doors open, and they just went in there beating on him. And the Paul Hunter took his gun and beat my son in the back of the head with the gun. They said his eyes rolled up into his head. He was hanging on to the dashboard. Before that handcuffs around his wrist. He was sitting in this seat with a seatbelt on, hanging on for dear life. And he got knocked out, beat to death. They pulled him out by his feet. 2 of those officers violently kicked and beat my son. He sustained head and chest injuries. And they couldn't tell the manner of death. It was undetermined because of the head and chest injuries. They tried to save my son. They come to my door at 1:20 in the morning, woke me up, and told me that my son had expired of a drug overdose. I asked them where he's at, and they said St. Mary's Hospital. And I go there, and my son was not there. And I was hoping they had the wrong boy. I was thinking, not my boy, he's not here. So they tell me, yes, it was your son. But I never seen my son. So I go home, called the Channel 3 News, and asked them, to come out. I had a story I want them to tell because some funny stuff went on. They never contacted any of the family members to tell them, anybody, me, that, they needed someone to identify the son, although his name at the hospital was under Andy Doe. So it took me a long time to find all this paperwork because of that. The hospital there put it under investigation. The morgue put it under investigation and sent it to the prosecutor's office, which Chris Childs is the prosecutor. And he's in with the clique of the money. So, he's not going to talk to me. He couldn't talk to me. He didn't have anything to say. My son died of an overdose. But when I try to find my son's paperwork, it's all hid. Nobody knows who Chris Ratliff was or is. But yet, my son knew each and every one of these guys. He dealt drugs with Mayor David Fellington, sold him cocaine. And Chris told me this. We have other kids that have been killed here. So I knew this was going to happen. And I told him before he got killed, a couple months before he got killed, I said, son, they don't want to do their job here. All they want to do is kill people. They just want to go on with their business. I said, you better leave them alone. Mom, I know them all, he said. But he didn't know this was going to happen. He was an animal rescuer. And he was a good-hearted soul, never started any problems with anyone, never, ever robbed anyone. He was not a violent person. He was a drug addict. And we miss him very much. I try to get justice, go through the court systems. It's all a big joke because my son died of a drug overdose. I didn't see the pictures of my son's badly beaten body. For a long time, it took me to get these pictures. I had an attorney working on this case. His name was Paul Beiser. He worked at Freddie King Law Office in Huntington, West Virginia. And he sat on my case. I took all the evidence to the FBI, to him. I mean, I'm doing more work than this guy is. I went to the Internal Affairs, and there they even made me swear the paper saying, you know, this is true. And from what I understood, you know, it was true because I knew my son would not overdose. He had been on this drug for years, and he knew that he wasn't going to overdose. He had no intentions of overdosing. He was so hooked on this drug, at the end he had to have this drug. It made him feel normal. He was even, when he had went into rehab 2 different times, I had taken him, bought his cigarettes and clothes, everything he needed. I had taken them to him to keep him in there because I thought, you know, I'm going to save my son. I turned in many drug dealers that come over to my son's house and drop drugs off, take down license plate numbers. I was at the point that I would want to put a sign on his home saying, this house is being watched. But I didn't get to that point. When he went to rehab, it was so nasty in there. He was there for 1 week and called me and told me, Mom, I cannot stay here. It is nasty. I said, son, help him clean it up. He was a good worker. He always loved cleaning. He cleaned house. He was a great cook. He had fun. He was a lover of life. He got hooked on the drugs. He still loved life. He didn't want to die, but the drug practically ran him. He would go and do his drug and feel normal then. At that time, he had to have it. Every bone in his body would ache if it was heroin. And I seen this stuff, but I have never done it before. And I seen it through my son. It was black tar heroin. Well, there was a bunch of phone numbers that I had turned in. He had a cell phone. I go searching for all this evidence. My son's personal effects I have yet to see. And there's a Captain Steve Hall, which I read in the paper Sunday. He died at 50 years old. I called that man. I didn't know he was sick, but he had cancer, and in 2007, they said in the newspaper Sunday. So he's like, I asked him, sir, I need my son's personal effects. The case is dropped. It's over with. They dismissed it first, and then they dropped it. So the case, as far as I was considered, was over with. I couldn't fight the law. That's what all the attorneys kept telling me around here. You cannot fight the law. I'm thinking, yes, I can fight the law because I'm still fighting the law to this day. But I shake like a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs because I never know when they're going to come and get me or one of my others and my family members. So I turn in all of the hospital records. I have to go get a paper of estate saying that I am my son's administrator, and they tell me I can go to the hospital, pick up my son's paperwork. So this took about a week or so. Well, I still didn't get those papers. They couldn't find them.